Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for one of those small little videos exploring some minor particular topic. This one is called Why the Bloody Hell Didn't You Cast My Game, Dane? A fascinating topic, I know. I mean, occasionally, why didn't you cast my game, Dane? It was brilliant. And of course, the obvious ones are that may, not as brilliant as you like to think. But ultimately, the answer is actually a lot more complicated than that. Sometimes it can just be, your game wasn't that great, but also other factors, other wondrous factors, like, for example, it's only been about 2 weeks, I think, since we had the last patch. Just note how many replays I've got here in those 2 weeks. Some I picked up from companyofheroes2.org, gamereplays.org, but the majority has been sent in to me by people, by fans, by you. And note, this is not to say, don't send in replays, you stupid gits. No, quite the opposite. Keep sending them in. It's just more to point out the logic. If we imagine 2 weeks, and that's 14 days, and I've definitely got more than 14 replays here. You do the math. I simply cannot cover that many replays. Not unless I get a time machine, or a lot more computers, and a lot more money. And neither of those I have at the moment. And obviously I'm sticking to the 1 replay a day, maybe 2 if I'm feeling generous, if there's something, a bit extra I feel like throwing in. Which can still happen, but I'll admit that has happened not so much lately. I might try to get a bit back on track with that as well. Either way though, point being, just mathematically, I'm just not going to be able to cast out every game there. And that's for starters. Another one is, as you might notice, if you're a bit of a careful observer, the replay section is a bit of a mess. More specifically, I can't really organize it in a manner that's satisfactory to me in Company Heroes. It was rather, based on when the replay was actually added to the playback folder, which actually made it very nice for me to sort of pay attention to when was it added. I can sort of go through, get an idea here. Problem is here, it rather sorts by date, and thing is, depending on where you are in the world, it rather gives you different dates, or more specifically, how it sort of does the dates, which pretty much means, at the top here, we've got recent, but also more specifically Danish ones. Like, for example, I've got a bunch of my games, and again, all of a sudden we get this, and then at the same time we might have one that's actually pretty close in date, but, all the way down here, in that sense, it causes a bit of trouble. Again, it makes it a bit difficult to sort of pull over, to get an overview of. And then, of course, it comes another one, which is, of course, as people tend to, name their replays in a lot of fun manners, which actually doesn't always help. In particular, when also they then proceed to, send me an email where, for example, there's just a replay that says temp, and I'm like, great, you gave me absolutely no information when you send it in, which isn't really making this a priority for me to even look at, compared to the other one, who, say, gave me a nice replay and with a name on it, which actually I can quickly spot out. For example, actually also says something about the replay. Stuff like this tends to be a good one. This one, there's some tend to be ones, even, when names are involved, also quite helpful, something that helps mark it out a bit. Pack 43 in action. Hey, we can understand that, can't we? Things like that. For example, if it's a Monday Novice fight, if you wanted there, mark the replay Monday Novice fight. It makes it a lot bloody easier for me. And the easier you make it for me, the more likely you might even find up, your replay being cast. So, another little fun fact there, the easier you make it for me, more likely you might actually end up, with the replay cast. Otherwise, keep sending them in, keep playing different maps. Because here's another fun one. I actually tried to sort of get a sort of, variety on maps. And, as you might also be noting, there's certain maps that, appear a lot over. And again, that's because, all of a sudden have a lot of those maps. And then perhaps less of the other maps. Like, for example, but again, that's also not a lot of 2 versus 2 games, but hopefully you get the idea. If you suddenly see, a lot of this map on it, sending another replay on that map might not, net you success. Again, I try to get variety that also means, who wins, what sort of doctrines. If you can actually use something differently, that's great as well. When I talk about, saying, oh, this is disappointing, why didn't he do that, why didn't he do that, why didn't he do that, that really ought to be a cue to some people, perhaps I should actually do something different, something noticeable, and try to do it well, or at least moderately well. perhaps even win with it, and then send it in today, and then they can say, oh, that's actually impressive. You there, random person, you did it. You have inspired me to cast this, because it is wondrous. You are wondrous, even handsome. Stuff like that. But occasionally it doesn't happen again. I just get a bunch of replays, same match, in essence, on the same map, and I really have to go, come on. Occasionally you get those guys are sort of like, well, he complained about, this unit not being used properly. I'll just send a replay with me using it properly, and there you go. It got casted. Amazing stuff like that, Listen to me when I actually talk for a replay. Note the things I complain about. If I'm complaining about doctrines, try using something different. I mean, I give little cues, little hints here and there, little markers for you to pick up on, and then try to, excel within them. I mean, take some initiative. Taking initiative is a wonderful ability, a wonderful skill to have in life. Basically means not sitting around your bloody arse waiting for someone to hand you your victory. So, I mean, that's going to be another factor. I mean, I'm going to always, try for something a bit different, a bit interesting, something good. And if you can provide something good, then something interesting is also reasonably good. If you can provide something good and interesting, I mean, that's amazing. That's just straight out of the ballpark. So keep those things in mind, when you're looking over your replay and going like, should I send this in to Dane? I used this doctrine barely at all. Come to think of it, I didn't even use some of my veterancy abilities at all. And I resorted to some pretty dull tactics. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe you should. I mean, I'm not the one to judge. Well, technically I am, but you get the point. I'm not trying to necessarily say, you should feel bad about it, but, I'm just sort of trying to clue you in what might get you a higher chance of actually getting in, but also ultimately pointing out the fact that, ultimately you might just not get cast that day or even soon, because, again, I get a lot of replays. I want a lot of replays, by the way. Don't stop sending in, for heaven's sake. Don't stop sending in. Keep sending. But, again, the point being is, ultimately, I mean, there's always a chance something happens. I mean, there's even a chance, just on a whim, I go, I'll just choose this game because for some reason I'm being incredibly stupid today and I want to cast this one. That also happens. I won't deny that. But you sort of get the idea. I mean, all the idea is, straight after a patch, there's a nice golden opportunity right there, a nice golden timeline where everything can happen, including your game cast. Why do you wonder? Because I have nothing to cast. And the quicker you can send in something amazing, in particular I've set new patch also threw in some new commanders, and you use those commanders in an amazing way. I mean, that's amazing, that's great. I mean, that's going to be the stuff, that puts you on the front page, or, on that today's cast, stuff like that, Get out there, take some initiative, play some games, send them in if they're good. Send them in if you actually do something different. If you do it differently good. If you actually use something differently and, you got something new, like the new commanders. I mean, I'd really like to see some of those new commanders being used, perhaps in on a new map, but that doesn't necessarily have to be it. But again, send it in. Send it in. Also, I don't do 3 versus 3s, 4 versus 4s annihilations. If you send this in, I'm just going to ignore it. Yes, I know, I said it, it's not very nice, but that's the truth. I'm simply not going to cast those. Rules are rules. And I have them for very particular reasons I've gone through many, many times over the last few years. And I don't really feel like particularly going over them again, so no. Just no. No. That also means you, Harold. Though I don't know who Harold actually is. So there you go. A sort of brief overview of things. Probably a bit chaotic, a bit, brainstorming from me. I know that's probably not the best method, but, it's a bit, difficult to sort of make something impressive out of this. But again, it also sort of highlights some of the bit of, I kinda wish that Relic would improve this little screen, give me more filters, more importantly something so you can sort it by when it's added, by doctrines used. I would actually love to be able to see what doctrines they have down here, bulletins. Time, in fact, would also be great, stuff like that. But, that's more for me to say to Relic, although, of course, if you were to tell Relic, that Imperial Dane would appreciate it, I'd appreciate it. So, there you go. Hopefully that slightly enlightened you, or at least left you less dumbfounded as to why things are happening. and perhaps also a bit clearer on the absolute madness that goes on inside my mind when I go through all of this. So hope you enjoyed this, hope you learned a thing or two about it, hope you have been enlightened and prepared for new wondrous endeavours in your lives. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers.